morning, and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX. Hey, we're back live in the studio after a 3-week hiatus. Bill Kearney of Northlake Medical Pharmacy is back with us from his vacation, and then I had jury duty last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you actually do that?
I did not have to serve. I went in, and the trial was expected to last through the end of the month of October. Wow. And when I heard that, I said, I can't do that. I can't take that much time off work. I can't afford that much time. I can't afford that much money loss. So, you know how it is in jury selection. The first thing they do is if anybody has a hardship, you can apply for a hardship with the court. And It was a little bit different. It was in a different courtroom, a different judge that I'd ever seen before. And I've done this, a few times, half a dozen times in my lifetime here in Lake County. And they had us actually fill out a form and then submit the form to the judge and the counsel, and then they dismissed us for like 45 minutes and brought us back in, and everybody got to go.
Really?
Not a single person was denied their request for hardship, and mine was a financial hardship.
So did they continue the trial? I mean, did
they
go
well,
through
they yeah. So of the room, I would say there was probably a quarter of us that applied for hardship. So 3/4 of the room were taken to a different location where then they were filling out questionnaires that normally when I go in, they just kind of, as they call your name, they ask you the questions.
Right, that's what I've experienced.
This new system was everybody is filling out a questionnaire for those questions that you're normally asked, and then they were going to be dismissed that day and then brought back the next day after, and the judge and counsel would have the afternoon to go over, and the next day then if they liked you or didn't like you, you would be kept or dismissed, and they would go from there.
Wow.
So a whole different system, something I'd never seen before.
Maybe it was a capital offense, maybe it was a...
Well, I can't, obviously I can't talk about it,
yeah.
but it was a case of the defendant versus the County of Lake.
Oh.
So that's about as much as I can say about it. So you're right, it could have been, something that was... And for it to last that long, a trial to last that long, usually I've gone in and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
But for it to be, a 3 or 4 week trial, pretty big deal. So
well, that was more fascinating than my vacation.
Well, really?
Went to Hawaii, which we have a timeshare over there, and we were over there for about a week, and I took a fall, and every time I fall, I break a bone. Mm-hmm. And this time, I thought I just strained a muscle, and so I went into the spa and relieved the pain considerably, and the next day I did the same thing, and the third day I was in extreme amount of pain, and so the day before we were going to come home, my wife said, well, we need to go to the hospital and decide, what's wrong here, because I just thought it was a strained muscle, and it ended up that I go in to see the physician in Kauai, and he says, are you taking any pain medication? And I said, no, I don't do that. I've had several surgeries, and I just kind of stand the pain. He says, well, I think you might need some pain medication. And he brought in a pain reliever, and he said, I'm going to have you go take x-rays. And then when I had the technician do the x-rays, she said, there's something major going on here. I can't tell you what it is. And I get back and see the physician, and the physician says, I got good news and bad news. He says, you don't have a punctured lung, but you have 3 broken ribs, not cracked ribs, 3 broken ribs.
Wow.
And he says that I'm going to give you some medication to get you by until you get back to the mainland. And so he did, and we were leaving the next day to come back to Oakland, and so instead of putting my pain medication in my pocket, I put it in my carry-on, and someone we were with says, just check the carry-on, and you won't have to worry about putting it up, and she said that 3 or 4 times, and so I just checked it. Of course, that was my pain medication, so I hadn't had anything for pain for maybe 6 or 7 hours. And then I got on, it's a 5 or 6 hour plane ride back from Hawaii, and I'm standing the whole time with my in the bulkhead place up there with my head against the wall because I couldn't sit down.
Wow.
And then I ended up going to my primary care physician on Monday, and now I have partially collapsed lungs. They don't do anything for you for broken ribs because they're afraid that you're going to get pneumonia. Well, it hurts so much to breathe that I'm not taking deep breaths, so I'm not inflating my lungs. So now that pain has gone from the side of me into the front of me, into the back of me, and those ribs are just floating because they're not, they're completely broken. So once again, I
go on a vacation,
pull
come
it
home,
off,
enter
you know,
van. Yes, this is getting to be a routine.
And
so.
I'd resigned from the board of directors that I was on, where I travel all over the country, so I could go on my fishing trip. That's twice a year, the first week in May and the second week of October, and now I can't even do that.
Oh,
so anyway.
Well, at least you're here. I mean, it could have, could be worse.
Yeah, it could be worse. And,
but boy, I tell you what, to have to spend time at the hospital on vacation.
Yeah, especially in Hawaii, the
yeah.
weather was beautiful, and I had taken all my snorkel gear and everything to do, and we did go down the river in some inner tubes, which was the first part of the trip, and enjoyed that immensely. It was a 3-hour ride in these big inner tubes through the caves, and enjoyed that immensely, and made as good a time out of it as I could. I retired early every evening while everybody else is playing cards and going out to dinner, and actually that was a relief because there was no way that I could stand up. And as you know, I belong to the Lions Club, and
Yeah.
Dana,
I was out there, and I went to go see my onion frying. My man on the grill frying the onions, and you weren't there.
No.
And I thought, well, this is strange.
Yeah.
And then I seen Dana was sitting there taking the money, and she told me all about it, and I thought, oh boy, it must be pretty bad if you're not,
And of course, she has, that progressive disease where she falls, and we had gone out to dinner on Saturday night or Friday night at the Grand Hyatt, which is right next to where we were staying, and she has on long slacks because we're going to dinner, and so I didn't realize she didn't have her braces on. She has to walk with braces because of her disease, and next thing I look, we're leaving, and she's down.
No.
She has a big hematoma on her arm.
Oh
and,
boy.
because she doesn't feel. And what the Hyatt had, they have sidewalks next to the pool, and the restaurant was next to the pool, and then they have real thin carpets.
Yeah.
Well, when the texture changes of the walking surface, she doesn't feel
She
it.
doesn't feel it. Yeah.
So next thing I know, she's down.
Well,
So
this is nothing nothing like that. But my wife was in bed one night, and my son came running in and bounced up on the bed or did something, and she had her cell phone above her and on her nightstand, and it fell and hit her right below the eye, and her entire eye, all underneath and up the side, is just black and blue. And it looks like I beat her. You know what I mean? It looks like I'm an abusive husband. And,
well,
and that's taken weeks to get fixed. But I think we got a call, Bill. Let's
Okay.
see here. Good morning. You're on Health Talk.
Hi, this is Allison Pinellas at our Lakeside Hospital, and I wanted to talk to you about the Heroes of Health and Safety Fair.
Did you want to talk to us about it on the air?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then can you call back after 11, and I'd be happy to do that for you.
Yeah, and I guess I'd love to talk about it on the air. It's a free family event.
Well, you're on with Bill Kearney from Northlake Medical Pharmacy and Health Talk.
Oh, hi, Bill. Sorry about
Hi,
calling
Allison.
at the wrong time. Well, Bill actually is getting there. Lakeview
Northlake.
Northlake, yeah.
Lake has a pharmacist who's going to be helping this event as well, actually. We're doing a brown bag event there where folks can bring their medication to this event and get some education on the types of drugs that they're taking and what to take at what time and what things to not mix it with and so on.
All right, when's the event?
The event is next Saturday, the 14th, from 10 to 3 at the Lake County Fairgrounds.
All right, good deal. Well, if you want to give me a call back later on, I'd be happy to talk to you more, and we can put together a public service announcement as well.
Thank you, and thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Allison. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Small town.
Small town, yeah. Hey, you know what? That's what makes it great.
That is. And
Yeah.
I was going to tell you a little bit more about. I fell. I'd been out to the pool, and I got up to the room, and my feet were wet, and so I went to get up. I was in the bathroom, and I slipped on the water, and I hit the door panel and completely ripped the back of my head open.
Oh, boy.
And the reason I fell and broke the ribs, the back of my head was bleeding so bad that I had a concussion. And the rest of the people were in the front room of the timeshare. And every time I'd go to get up, the blood was so thick on the floor, I would slip on the blood.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
that's how I ended up breaking my ribs.
Wow.
And my wife didn't know she was a paramedic, but she was able to steri-strip the back of my head. And then when they found me, I was just blood all over my face and all over the floor in the bathroom. And in fact, the timeshare just called me yesterday and wanted to make sure that I was okay. And I said,
Oh, my goodness.
yeah, I am. But anyway, we're here to talk about...
Well, what are we going to do about this now?
yeah.
You know, are we going to send you with shoulder pads and a helmet every time you go?
a little bit of bubble pack and
Yeah.
wrap us up. And but I really want to talk about what's happened in the last couple of days in our world, and the Puerto
I'll tell
Rico
you.
situation and the Las Vegas situation. And you know, we always talk about, you know, you must know the medicines you're taking, and we must know what you're doing, and you have to take responsibility for your own health. And in Las Vegas, of course, this was completely not even suspected of happening. People were seeing Jason Aldean, which is a great family entertainer, and people of all ages were there, and you know, 58 people were killed, and 59, including the assassin, and over 500 of injured. So we're imagining what that was like, and people going through and trying to find people, and then having people that needed their medication, and what were they on, and if you couldn't recall, did you have any kind of information on you that would allow the health professionals to treat you, because a lot of people that go to concerts are doing it as a last wish. A lot of people are doing it as a first wish. A lot of people are on medications. A lot of people are diabetics. A lot of people have underlying conditions, and you don't think about it at the time because of the traumatic event that happened. You think about the people that were fatally shot, and you think about the people that were injured, and you don't think about the health responders, the first responders that were there, that you may have been asking for medicine, you may have had a heart condition, you may have had something that you needed a medication immediately. And we talk and talk and talk about the situation on what you need to do about being more informed about your medication. And Allison, that just called from the hospital, is brought up a good point, and it's a brown bag program that we have offered many times on this radio show. And one of my pharmacists is going to be there to help identify these situations at no cost to you, to go through all your medications and find out if you're taking something that's a duplicate medication, on why you're taking it. This is not meant to embarrass you, or it's to make you healthier. It's to find out if you're taking things you shouldn't be taking, or if you should be taking something that you're not taking. Bring in all your medications, both your over-the-counter stuff, your vitamins, your minerals, if you're doing acupuncture, let us know. Any kind of alternative therapy, it all works to make you healthier, and we need to know that. So be aware that that's going to be next weekend at the fairgrounds, and Paul will be having a public service announcement about it. And it's just something that you need to be concerned about, and as well as and this has nothing to do with the event next Saturday, but you need to think who's going to care for you. If you haven't done that yet, and every time an event like this happens, I say to my wife, you know, we really need to get in touch with the mortuary. And as much as you don't like to think that there's anything wrong with you or that you're due to leave this part of the earth, that doesn't mean that can't happen, as we saw Saturday night and or Sunday night, whichever night it was. And nobody thought when they went to that concert that was going to be their last living breath. And 58 people found out that was the last event that they would ever go to. 500 more needed to be treated and find out what they needed to get in order to survive, whether it be surgery, whether it be CPR, whether it needed to be medication, whether you were bound to have an infection. It was a part of your life that you thought you would never, ever have to experience, and you're going through that now. Some people were paralyzed. Other people were shot in the lung, shot in the head, that had no chance of survival whatsoever. So we just want to remind you that those things can happen and will happen. They will continue to happen whether you're in the military, whether you're in the flood zone, whether you're in a fire zone, as we experienced a couple years ago. You just never know, and you need to be prepared as well as you can be. And that includes myself. You know, I talk about this all the time, and I keep thinking I'm going to write a note out, a letter out with all the medications I take, and put a little 3x5 note card or something in my possession, so somebody would be able to find it. And that's all to get you a better chance of survival. So speaking of survival, I want you to know we're doing flu shots now. We got them in while I was away. We had ordered signage to put up in front of the pharmacies letting you know that we're giving shots. I think the Hill Road store did receive theirs. We haven't. But I'm giving flu shots, and I'm doing quadrivalent shots, which are one more strain than what we've had in the past, so a little bit more protection. We're not doing the nasal inhaler like we did before, which was an active flu vaccine for children. That has proved to be zero effective, and so we're not doing that now. We're doing from 6 years up, and we're doing nothing but quadrivalent shots, which is 4 shots or four strains. So the other store at Hill Road is doing some trivalent and some quadrivalent, and we've done several hundred so far, and we are in the process of getting more vaccine so we can continue to do this. So you're in the prime time now to be getting flu shots. If you're on Medicaid or Medicare or Medicare D insurance, most insurances are paying for the flu vaccine at this point. They would be not very smart to deny paying for that, but that doesn't mean that they will. But most people have paid, their insurance have paid for it. It's $25 if you don't have an insurance company, but it's very important that you get the flu vaccine now. As you see that our chances of survival in this world get slimmer rather than better at times. And then if you get a disease like cancer or a condition that's going to cause you to weaken your immune system, then it puts you even at more of a risk. And since the flu vaccine lowers your immunization level or your ability to fight off disease for a short amount of time, it's important that you get the flu shot before one of those diseases gets a hold of you. It's a one-time shot. You get it every year. We are also doing quite a few Tdap shots right now, which has tetanus, diphtheria, and whooping cough in it. So if you have anybody in your family that's having a new baby and you're going to be around that baby has no protection when they're around you unless you have a pertussis shot or a Tdap shot. So if you're going to be in that position or going to be in that position in the next 3 months during the holidays, you need to get a Tdap shot too. And of course, if you're a senior and you haven't got both pneumonia shots, a lot of people got the newest pneumonia shot, the Prevnar 13, last year and the year before that, but they still needed to get the Pneumovax 23. And so that one is due for you, and Medicare does pay for that also. So a lot going on in healthcare, a lot going on. Somebody came to me yesterday. They got a flu shot and told me they were getting a shot for their prostate cancer, and it was $10,000 a month, and only the hospital could give it. And you have to realize that that's the new cost of medications out there, that some of your copays. I have a friend that's a relative in Salt Lake City that has a clotting problem and is on warfarin to stop the clotting, and the doctor wants him to change to Eliquis. Eliquis is a form of a non-warfarin type, non-Coumadin type antiplatelet drug that will help you keep the blood from clotting and having a stroke or a heart attack. And it's quite expensive compared to warfarin or Coumadin. The advantage of it is that you do not have to take a INR test or a test to check the clotting for it like you do when you're taking Coumadin, which requires a test for at least once a month, sometimes once a week. And that clotting time is affected by medication that you take, also affected by the foods that you eat. So it's important that you observe those conditions. With the Eliquis, it's a non-warfarin type drug that does not require a INR test or a ProTime in order to continue to medicating yourself with it, and the quality of the shot is just as good as it is for warfarin. The one downside of that is two downsides. Number one, the cost. Even if you have an insurance company, the copay is higher, and you usually have to get a prior authorization because the other drug is still available at a much lower cost. The second thing is that it's much more difficult to stop the bleeding with that type of a medication than it is for warfarin. Warfarin, you just alter the strength or alter the foods that you're eating, and we can stop the bleeding rather quickly. With the Eliquis type drugs, it's much more difficult. Xarelto also, and you have to assume that kind of a risk. Now, what the percentage is, I have many patients that are taking Eliquis-like drugs and haven't had a special incidence of bleeding. So again, it's that old risk versus benefit thing. Is the benefit greater than the risk, or is the risk greater than the benefit? And you have to start analyzing that and deciding which is the best for you. Flu shots we're giving every day, Monday through Saturday, and except for Sunday. You don't have to have an appointment. We're considering having a clinic on the 26th of or 25th of October on a Wednesday to get as many as we can in at one time. Diane, one of our pharmacists, is going to be working that clinic with us, and hoping to get as many of you immunized as we can during the month of October. As the months increase, October through February, the symptoms of the disease start manifesting itself and getting greater and greater exposure. So one of the reasons we suggested that you wait until October was also the effectiveness of the vaccine gets lower as you get farther out into the new year. So we suggest not starting until October. Many of you got flu shots at other places, which is fine. It just won't be as effective towards the end of the flu season. But now is the ideal time to take it, and we'll take you up through April or May as far as the effectiveness goes. The vaccine is actually good until the 30th of June of 2018. So don't be afraid to come in, and we'll have you fill out a brief form. When I'm there, that's all I do besides doing management work, so I can take time to take care of you. I haven't been able to work beyond 3 or 4 o'clock because of the pain from the broken ribs, but I swear I'm going to get better. I plan on getting better, and I know I'll get better. I just have to behave myself, which is always one of those difficult things. I'm around Paul too much, and Paul gets by with it, where I have a harder time. Well, he's able to stand up, aren't you, Paul? I mean,
Sure, yeah.
And I've tried to figure out how he does that. You know, if I need to pay more attention on just walking. Every time I fall, I break a bone.
Yeah.
And my bone density comes out just fine. When they do a bone density test, it's fine.
Yeah.
But every time I don't know if I fall harder or what the deal is, but it seems like...
falls in the bathroom are dangerous because there's cabinets and tubs and dials, like on the wall, and towel hangers. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you could fall on.
I actually fell forward into the door jamb in the back of my head, and that's and I must have fallen really hard, and because I was unconscious, and then I got up and tried to get up, and I bled so much I was falling in my own blood. But good thing the people taking care of me didn't pass out when they saw blood.
My Celia broke her ribs in the bathroom when she slipped on water one time.
Did she?
Yeah, she came into the bathroom, and the floor was wet, and she slipped and went sideways and hit her ribs right on the side of the tub.
Yeah.
Broke her ribs that way. So it's a dangerous place.
How long was she out?
She was, it was a couple weeks before, she was up on her feet again. I mean, it was, they weren't broken, they were just cracked.
Oh.
But, still, I mean, I've had cracked ribs, and I can't imagine broken ribs. It's painful.
No,
you can't breathe, you can't move, everything.
Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some sleep apnea, which is a favorite of Paul's, and a few other topics that are in the news, and one is about eating healthier, which we've talked about a lot. Have you been to the pharmacy recently where the employees know your name when you walk in the door and have your prescription refill waiting? If you answer no, then you probably haven't been to one of the Northlake Medical Pharmacies. Hi, my name is Bill Kearney, owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies. For 38 years, my wife Dana, our daughter Brandy, and our employees have been dedicated to giving you the best service we have when you come to get your prescriptions. We are a family-owned pharmacy, and our employees are members of the Northlake Medical Pharmacies family. We know you have a choice when you get your prescriptions filled, and we appreciate you making us your choice. You see, you are part of our family too. We truly care about your health and taking care of you when you aren't feeling well. We deliver your prescriptions free when we know ahead of time and do the best we can to take care of you and your family. Northlake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you, on Hill Road across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital and 347 Lakeport Boulevard outside the Bruno Shop Smart in Lakeport.
This is the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways for the week beginning Friday, September 22nd. In Lake County on Route 29 near Hothacker Lane beginning the 27th, expect 10-minute delays. And on 175 near Arroyo Vista Road, expect 5-minute delays weekdays. In Mendocino County on Route 1, expect a couple 5-minute delays north of Blue Slide Gulch. On Route 20, expect 5-minute delays at Little Lake Road and at Two Rock Lookout. On Highway 101 from the Gibson Creek Bridge to the Dora Creek Bridge, expect delays in multiple locations. That's mostly during weekdays. On 128 near the Dry Creek Bridge, expect 5-minute delays. On 162 west of Pukani, weekdays, expect 10-minute delays. On 175 near the Lake County line, expect 30-minute delays. On 253 near Singley Cattle Pass, expect 15-minute delays weekdays. And on 271 at Piercy, there's going to be a full closure. You can use a detour onto 101. That concludes the bulletin. Like us on Facebook for more updates and info on the type of work we're doing. That's Caltrans, District 1.
The 12th Annual Building Resilient Communities Permaculture Convergence is October 5th through the 8th in Hopland. The convergence will include dozens of workshops and keynote speakers exploring how to support greater resilience in our communities and our food, water, and energy systems, as well as live music, a village commons, food, yoga, and childcare. That's the 12th Annual Building Resilient Communities Permaculture Convergence at the Solar Living Institute in Hopland, October 5th through the 8th. For more info, go to permacultureconvergence.com.
Raising your family, tending to your animals, growing your own produce, preparing for the seasons, living the country life. Hi, I'm Jody Henke, host of Living the Country Life. Catch me every Monday through Friday at 9:35 a.m. and 4:35 p.m. for ideas and inspiration for your place in the country. That's Living the Country Life here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize their Member of the Month, Tom Lincoln from Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency. Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency insures hundreds of local and out-of-county businesses, providing such coverage as fire liability, business auto, workers' comp, umbrella liability, director and officer liability, and group benefits. It also provides a full line of insurance products to local farmers and agribusiness owners. To request an insurance review, Tom and his staff are located at 650 North Main Street in Lakeport. They can be contacted at 263-7162 or through the website at lincolnlevitt.com.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
All right, we're back.
We are back.
Yes.
And we,
Telling in tales of embarrassment at the doctor's office.
yes, Paul.
There's no shame any longer.
Paul had to go to a dermatologist, and he thought that you only got spots on you on your back. He didn't realize there were other places. And so
Well, it's one thing, when the doctor walks in and they're distinguished and, maybe hopefully a little older than you, and you feel a little bit of comfort. But when they walk in and they're younger, they're female, and they're attractive,
Yeah.
you kind of get a little bit embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then two more walk in, and, it's like a committee back there as they're examining me.
Yeah.
My head and my hands just going, I have no more shame.
Well, now I've got anxiety about being there in a couple of weeks.
Oh,
but-
boy. I got to go. I'm going back tomorrow.
Oh, are you?
actually,
He
to
probably wanted to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about sleep apnea. And those of you who don't know, if you try to get a full night's sleep, but you feel exhausted in the morning, and by afternoon you're just dragging, and it makes you irritable and tired, and of course your wife or your partner is not getting any sleep either because you're snoring, and then when you stop breathing throughout the night, you don't remember any of that, and it's quite a cycle. And Paul, we've talked about it on the air before. He had it really, really bad, and finally got a CPAP machine and is doing rather well with it. I'll give you a little story about that, Paul. I had, my wife has this disease, and it's affecting her right lung. And so they were trying to get her a BiPAP machine, which isn't a CPAP, but it actually inflates your lungs so because you can't inflate them anymore. And it's been 6 weeks now. It was ordered 3 months ago. We talked to the local distributor. Half the time you get somebody overseas.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
And first they tell you that, well, because it's a weekend, you can't expect it, and it's 7 working days before you get it. I call before we go on our vacation, and they tell us that that it's that doesn't include the weekends, and so you had Labor Day, and so my wife calls yesterday. It has a rush on it, and so my wife talks to the person, and they said, well, it has a rush on it, it'll get here. And she says, have you ever had a difficulty breathing? My wife says to the person, and she says, well, no. And she says, do you know what it's like not to be able to breathe? And she says, well, no. And she says, that's what's happening with me. And we've heard it was going to be 3 days. We heard it was going to be 5 days, 7 days. Now we're going into 6 weeks. And they said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. You know, it's got a rush on it. And it's extremely difficult, especially when you know how much good that can help a person. Everybody that I've talked to has had a good experience from having a CPAP machine. They actually have things now that are like pads that you put on your nose.
Yeah, I was going to mention when I first started on the CPAP machine, I had, it went over my whole entire nose and mouth airway, the mask that I wore, and then it's strapped on around my head, and then you've got the cord coming off, and it's, it takes a little bit to get used to, but I was able to get used to it fairly quickly, and it immediately, I was able to get better sleep. I mean, I think you saw the difference. I mean,
sure.
It was pretty immediate, but the side effect of it that was uncomfortable, other than having the apparatus strapped to your face like that, which you do kind of get used to, and I'm a back sleeper as it is, so it's not that big of a deal for me. I don't sleep on my sides too much, and I never sleep on my stomach. But it would cause me to get such dry mouth because the constant pressure, you're holding your mouth open, and you're getting the airflow into the back of your mouth. And even though my machine is it's got a humidifier in it, I was still getting dry mouth. So when I went to renew my my equipment, I asked them if they would send me what they call a pillow, like a nasal pillow, and those are the ones that go just under your nose. And when I first started doing it, and I was on the other thing, I would get 4 or 5 hours continuous sleep, and I thought, wow, that's really good, because I would never get more than like an hour, before. And since I've gone to the pillow, I'm not getting the dry mouth, so I don't have that uncomfortableness. It's more comfortable on my face because it's less, obstructive on me, and I'm getting 7 to 8 hours of straight sleep now a night. Wow. So, the nasal pillows for me are working great.
Well, I'm almost afraid to give you a medical quiz anymore because you're so much sharper than you were a couple months ago.
I used to fail, right?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
This guy used to fall asleep while we were on the air.
It's embarrassing,
and I'd hear him snoring, and I'd say, Paul, are you with me? Well, what a difference it has made for you. I mean,
it has made a huge difference. And I lost a lot of weight. I mean, I was up in the, the 275, close to 280 range, and I dropped down below 240. And that's kind of where I'm hovering, 235 area. Although, I noticed recently, probably because I'm not doing Little League or, summer's over now, I've put on a couple pounds over the last, month. And so I got to really be careful about just getting up and moving around while I work, because I sit all day long here in the studio. Yeah. And yesterday afternoon, there was nobody here but me. And at 3:30 in the afternoon, I'd been sitting here for a while, and I'm like, I got to do something, but I can't leave. So our building has got kind of like a center area where we have studios and offices. And I did probably 25 laps of just walking around the building just to get some, circulation going in me. But the CPAP thing for me, and I've heard this from other people that it's worked well. it didn't work for my brother for whatever reason. He wasn't able to handle the whole thing. And a friend of mine that had it as well, it didn't work for him. He wasn't able to sleep with it, you know. And you've got to get used to it, you know. It takes a little while.
Yeah, it didn't for my wife either. She tried every kind of device there was to attach to it. I'm thinking these pillows might be the thing that would
They're
make the
great,
difference.
you know. Another thing too is that I have a secondary machine that provides oxygen, and I cranked the oxygen up too on that. I was at it looked like a 4, and now I turned it up to a 6, and you know, I don't know if that's helping out as well, but I'm sure that getting more oxygen to the blood is always a good thing. So.
Yeah, that's her problem. She falls asleep all the time because she's not oxygenating her bloodstream, and so when I want her to run errands for me, it's not convenient. You know, I'm not. But anyway, the CP, I did a flu shot yesterday on a gentleman, and I talked to him quite a bit, and he was telling me that how much he didn't want to get the flu, and he says, you know, if it wasn't for a CPAP machine, he said, I wouldn't be here at all. He says, I wasn't getting any sleep. And he told me that, and neither was his wife. He said, you know, it's made such a difference in their relationship because she was so angry at him all the time because she couldn't sleep either. So as things progress in healthcare, there are a lot of advantages as well as disadvantages, but at least we're looking at something out there that can help the quality of life, which is really important. There have been a lot of people doing physicals now for treadmills and those kind of things, and one of the questions that was sent in to the Mayo Clinic letter I have is this guy had a treadmill test scheduled to look for heart disease, and it involved it exercising because he's not physically up to it. He wondered if there was another way to gather that kind of information. And there is another way to conduct a heart stress test that doesn't involve exercise, and several drugs can be safely used to mimic the effects of exercise stress on the heart. This is known as pharmacological stress imaging study. So if you can walk more than 5 minutes on flat ground or from 1 to 2 flights of stairs without needing to stop, you can most likely exercise enough to do the treadmill. I talked to an individual this week who was a pilot, and he had a stress test, and the person giving the stress test did not know that he had to go 8 minutes because it was a pre-flight. It was a flight physical, so only went 6.5. So he went to get his pilot's license, and they said, you didn't pass your stress test. And he said, well, nobody said anything about it at the time. Well, the difference was he didn't go 8 minutes. He only went 6.5. So he ended up retaking the test and, of course, passed the test and was able to get his pilot's license. This pharmacological stress testing usually is used only when an exercise stress test can't be performed due to limiting problems such as musculoskeletal problems and nerve problems or poor lung function. An exercise test is always preferable to one using drugs. The pharmacological stress imaging study as an exercise stress provides different information which to assess the condition of your heart and cardiovascular system. So it also allows doctors to see if exercise reproduces any heart or lung symptoms and how exercise affects other part of your cardiovascular system. It also measures your ability to exercise at varying levels. I'm due for a physical in a couple of weeks, and I asked my physician whether I could take an exercise induced stress test, and he said not at this time, but we're delaying the stress test part of it until later. It often doesn't require any imaging such as cardiac nuclear scan or an echocardiogram to be done in conjunction with the test, although sometimes they do require that. ECG tracings are often sufficiently informative. Still, imaging studies are frequently performed with exercise stress tests. So It's less expensive, takes less time. In addition, the drugs given to minimum exercise can have side effects of their own. For example, I'm on a beta blocker. A beta blocker is a blood pressure medication that slows down your heart rate and your diastolic function. Part of having a stress test is getting your heart rate up to a certain level. It's almost impossible to do if you have if you're on a beta blocker, because it keeps your heart rate down, keeps your diastolic pressure down, and so you can't reach those levels to find out if there's a lot of stress on your heart. For example, I went in Monday for my to follow up on this rib fracture, and my blood pressure was 116 over 74. So if I wasn't taking the beta blocker, it would probably be about 143 over 85 or 89. So although taking the blood pressure is not, or taking the blood pressure medication isn't something that I look forward to every day, my father died of a stroke or a heart attack when he was 65 years old. I've now got 10 years on him. He had a lot fewer broken bones than I did, and he was a farmer. But I've got him as far as age goes, and I will continue to take the medication. And again, another benefit of what you're going to be able to accomplish with having a brown bag test and finding out whether or not you're taking medication that you're supposed to be taking, or you're not taking medication that you should be taking, and to take care of a lot of the things. As we get older, there's a lot of different things that we end up taking more medication, having more disease states. I've had high blood pressure for probably 40 years. So did my dad. We were very active physically, mentally, high stress, being on a farm, and we were sharecroppers, tenant croppers, so we moved every 2 years, moved into different neighborhoods, went to different schools, had a lot of different things going on. And I would question that the stress was anything like what kids are going through today, with stress from drugs, from being bullied. There was plenty of bullying going on when we were younger, but it was a way of life then. My dad expected me to get beat up because I was fat, and my cousins were part of the ones that beat up on me because my dad wanted me to be a fighter. I wasn't a fighter. I survived. I learned how to survive, but I did well in combat, but somebody just wanting to whomp on me wasn't anything that I kind of looked forward to. I didn't want to learn to really protect myself. I didn't think that was necessary. Today, as we're in a society of aggressiveness when it comes to being in high school, in STEM schools, in different kinds of environments, middle schools and elementary schools, the pressure seems to be much greater. My grandson is autistic. I don't know if you ever watched this show. It's just brand new. It came out, I think it's called The Good Doctor. And it's about a young man that is a surgical resident at a San Jose hospital, and he's autistic. One of the things about being autistic is there's no filter. So when my grandson sees me and he sees me hurt, he says, "Grandpa, you're getting old. You're not being able to walk the way you did before." And in this production on television called The Good Doctor, this physician resident will see somebody with a tumor, and he said, in a stage 4 malignant tumor, and he says, you have a malignant tumor, you're going to die. And the whole theory is to try to teach this very talented intellectual individual, which my son and my grandson is that you need to filter what you say to people, because he's assisting a surgeon, and the surgeon is criticizing him, and he will say, you know, Dr. Smith, you're arrogant. You're arrogant and mean. And most resident physicians would not tell their supervising surgeon anything like that, because they want to keep their job. So they put him on menial tasks so he wouldn't interfere with the actual surgical procedures. And the president of the university has a lot of faith in him, and knows that he has a great amount to give to the university, and ends up trying to teach him to use those filters. And as unrealistic as it may seem to those of you who are not involved with somebody that's autistic, it is a great teaching mechanism for neophytes and for people that don't know what an autistic person that is very intelligent has to offer this world. And you talk about bullying. He gets bullied as much as anybody, and do you think the staff understand what that bullying is? It's pretty difficult. So I didn't mean to get off the subject, but all this has to do with healthcare, and all this has to do with the kind of society we're in now, and the ability for people that have deficiencies one way may have an efficiency someplace else that keeps it relevant to what's going on in our world today. So in the last few minutes we have, I'm thinking about dental fears, because that has been one of my problems throughout the years, because I've had a whole lot of work done on my mouth because I have bruxism and I grind my teeth down to nothing. And as you know, dental care is still important, and we handle it much differently than we did when I was growing up. When you had a cavity and you had it more than once or twice, they pulled a tooth. And then they started doing root canals, and then they started doing implants. So when you find out you have to go see the dentist, you need to ask your dentist or your dental hygienist to explain what you're going to go through, and voice if you have any questions. Also make your anxiety known. Practice relaxing. A lot of physicians will give you, or dentists will give you, an anxiety medication to take a half hour before you come in so you're not so tense. They'll do the same thing if you're taking an MRI and you have a problem with being claustrophobic. They will try to give you something for that. You know, I got to the point when I had colon cancer that I was taking a colonoscopy every 60 days. And each time they would give me a drug to help me not feel them cutting out the polyps. And finally, I grew polyps almost every time I was there. And so finally I asked them, don't give me any kind of anesthetic anymore. Just cut the polyps out. And then I don't miss a half a day of going to work because I'm sedated. So they did, and then they didn't know what to do with me, because I would get out of surgery and in recovery, and there was nothing to recover from except the pain. And I've been recovering from pain most of my life, and it didn't involve that much pain. So they were reluctant to let me go until I would remind them, look, you know, I didn't have any anesthesia. I didn't have that stuff that reminds me that I just had 2 martinis. All I did was they went in and cut out the polyps, and it wasn't that painful. So same thing with dentistry. I think if you catch it early, you kind of work on your relaxation skills. If you have a good dentist, and which reminds me, I have in my dentist office, I'm going in and give them all flu shots this week or next week. And I've gotten to know them quite well, and if I want to get even with them, I can use a big needle. That's a joke. I would never do that. But most of it is just being informed, knowing what's going on, knowing that the goal isn't to make you more uncomfortable. It's to make you more comfortable, and it's make your teeth last as long as possible. And that's what we try to do. And that's what they try to do. And again, I want to remind you about the flu shots. I can't inform you too many times about the importance of getting a flu shot. I did one of my employees yesterday and gave her an immunization, and she said, I hate getting these because it makes me sleepy. And I said, it really can't make you sleepy. And she says, well, it does. And then I think I'm getting the flu, and I said, you're not going to get the flu. This is an inactive virus, and when we give it to you, it doesn't activate for about 10 days. And so any side effect that you're going to get, except for the erythema around the redness around the injection site, is not really related to getting the shot. Several people will tell us that they don't want to get the flu shot because they'll get the flu. That is not possible, and we go through this every year, and I tell you that don't be alarmed about getting the flu shot. It's not going to give you the flu. It can't give you the flu. The only one that was capable of giving you the flu was the active virus, that was the active immunization, that was the nasal inhaler, and that was actually a live virus. The only thing that does now is give you the flu. It doesn't keep you from getting it. The purpose in giving an active flu vaccine was that it would activate the cells in there to go through that process and not really give you the flu. But a minor part of that got involved and caused a few symptoms, but never in the trivalent and quadrivalent immunizations that we give you now. So I just want to make sure that you're reminded to do that. There is one of the pharmacies in our community that will be closing in the next 10 days or so. I want to remind you that you can get your prescriptions transferred over to our pharmacies without a problem, and we'll be more than happy to do the work for you. Just let us know, and they are trying to inform their patients that they will no longer be open as a pharmacy in the future. So we'll be more than happy to take that on and help you out, transfer your prescriptions, transfer your insurance companies, and deliver your prescriptions. So I'd like to remind you we're North Lake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you at 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192. And outside the Bruno, Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard. Give us a call there at 263-1328. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Bill, and we'll see everybody back here again next Wednesday at 10 a.m. for Health Talk right here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX Lakeport.